Hey, this is MassX with a brand new Jujutsu Kaisen Phantom Parade video. And we're going to talk about the community sit down they had today. We're going to do a recap of that, listened in on the entire thing. And I actually first want to say thank you to Xanon and the fact that they are attempting to try to do something like this. I hope it continues on at least a monthly basis as at all possible, because I think it goes a long way. But I do think some things got a little overlooked and pushed through. Maybe people didn't catch them that I think are going to be important to talk about. Now, one of the first things that I really want to talk about is the structure of this, because with Bilibili, it is a little different. They are not a pure publisher on this game. It became very evident early on that Bilibili is what you would call a partial developer of this game. They are not building any of the original content at this time, but they are responsible for the conversion to global. And as was stated during this sit down, that certain aspects of it have lots of bugs for when it's being ported over for purposes of the community. But what it does tell us is that anything that's currently available on the Japanese version is available to Bilibili, which is something that's amazing to hear. It is just the time it's going to take their developers to port that over for purposes of the global version. So what does that mean? Well, it means things as was discussed, the tower will be coming sooner than it did for Japan. It means the AI auto system, the quality of life upgrade that Japan got, we will be getting it sooner. Was there a timeline given? No, but it was clear that it was high priority for Bilibili to get these things out there. And the other biggie that came out of that was the pity system. Now again, if you're familiar with the Japanese version, it is still a hard pity of 250 for characters. But they did implement a ticket system where you are able to at least convert your pity points if you don't make the hard pities for the recollection or the character, so at least you didn't feel your polls were a complete loss and you get no points for that, because the Japanese system doesn't have a rollover. But they did, and it was just recently in the last few months, implement that system. That will be coming sooner too. So to me, that's a big win, knowing that Tower is coming sooner than later, knowing that the pity ticket transfer system will be coming sooner than later, and of course the AI auto system. Those are biggies. But what also came out of this, which is also very important to understand, is these are contracts between different companies. So you have Bilibili that's contracted with the Japanese developers and interest holders. And what came out of that discussion is also the fact that you have the IP owner. And this is not uncommon, okay? An IP owner has to sign off sometimes, and they have rights sometimes to veto certain things. So let's say you're not happy about something on the Japanese system. Well, if that IP holder that has the ownership of that license that's allowed to assign it to you to use has the right to basically veto things, well, a lot of times it's not the developer that is the problem. It's that IP holder. So I just want people to understand that, because one of the big takeaways from this sit down is I feel like Bilibili is trying the best they can to accommodate things that would make the global community happier, but there is only so far they can go, because it can be shot down either by the developers, the original developers of the Japanese version, or possibly even at times the IP holder, based on those licensing agreements and the agreements between Bilibili and the original developers. So what really came out of that, to make a summary of that, is what it really means is, if something is not in the Japanese version of the game, it is going to be very difficult for Bilibili to implement something with original content in game. So I know a huge part of everything for everybody is the pity system, because it's so high, because quite honestly, on a global landscape, it is very high compared to a lot of games, and it's not what the norm has been. The likelihood of the actual pity system itself moving down, say from, instead of for a guaranteed character at 250, it's 200 or 180. I don't see that happening unless the Japanese developers are able to push that through and get it done. I don't see that happening for global due to these types of restrictions. Doesn't mean it won't happen. No, it doesn't. Doesn't mean it's going to probably be a long time if it is going to happen. Sadly, probably so. But I don't put that on the shoulders of Bilibili. I put that on the shoulders of the Japanese developers. And going with that probably too is the rates in the game. If right now we have recollection and characters in the same banner, that's how it's been since day one in Japan. But for most banners, including limited banners, I exclude those special ones where they're usually paid banners and you're guaranteed one of two characters. We're talking about the 90% of the banners we see in the game. The fact that the character rates are lower than the recollection. It's not a 50-50 chance. You're more likely to get a recollection SSR than you are a character SSR. And I know a lot of people would really like to see at least a 50-50 rate in those banners, or the banners split themselves. Well, I think this is going to fall under the guise again of how it is structured in the Japanese version, and they don't really have any legal leeway to change that Bilibili unless the Japanese version does it. So again, sadly, it's probably what people don't want to hear. It's the reality of the situation, and I want people to understand, because you have multi-levels working here through multiple contracts, that it is not as easy as just flipping a button. So, but let's get to talk about more of what Bilibili can do. Well, it became evident, of course, that because they are a quasi-developer in the game, that they actually, their team is who's responsible for coding it over for purposes of global, has leeways with a lot of other things. What are those things? Well, the banners themselves, they can put them in any order apparently that they choose to do. What does that mean? Well, it means, and they stated this clearly during the community sit down, they're not going to follow nor expect them to follow how the Japanese release schedule was. They have reign to change that up. So that's interesting. So what does that mean? Does it mean things will be sped up? Does it just mean the banner orders will change? Well, it's a combination of that. We didn't get direct answer on the speeding up, except for a question back, which basically stated, well, have things sped up? And they have. The release dropping has been a little quicker than it was for Japan. So the interesting part about this is that is one area they have leeway. So to me, the good side of that is, if they're smart, they know to intertwine the lesser popular banners, the ones that aren't necessary polls, the ones that really don't require anyone to pull on unless you want to collect the character. Should be, if it's done smart. In Japan, it wasn't like this. You had big lulls where you didn't really need to pull on the banner, and if you were free to play, you just kept hoarding. Hopefully, Bilibili has seen the sales statistics from Japan and can weed out the good and the not so good banners. So if they want to move things around, they're giving some spacing, even if they want to increase it, the speed to a certain degree, which would be incredibly helpful for free-to-play players. Does it fix the problem completely? No. But it does allow more breathing room if they are smart about how they want to implement that. So that is another positive to note, that they do have that leeway. And like I said earlier, the fact that they're going to have the leeway to bring content in sooner than later is awesome, is great. And if they do it smart, for example, Tower, instead of Japan that just dropped it at like 6 months or whatever it was, and you had all the levels at once, and then you didn't see any new levels for like almost 4 months or whatever it was. If they stagger it, it at least builds a constant rate of content, because that is something that even the host, Zanin, stated that he doesn't look at this game, and this is the same exact way I've always felt about this game. And if you've listened to my videos previously, this is not a game that you have to spend hours on end on every day. Once you're done with your content, you're doing your logins, you're maximizing what you can get for that day. It can take you 10, 15 minutes and you're out. It is not one of those games that you're going to be on it all the time. And I don't see that changing content-wise, because if Bilibili is reliant on the content provided from Japan as the baseline, and they can't create original content to put into the game themselves, then yeah, those aspects of the game are going to be the same. And it is one of the things that has always dumbfounded me since day one, and it's not just with this game. So many games are released overseas first before global, and then the hoopla and uproar over things in global versions when it's not much different or exactly the same as the prior version in another country, and people act surprised when it's been out there since day one. And that is how the game was built, and that's how its success or failure in the other country was based on. And quite honestly, the Japanese version of this game has been a steady, constant money maker in that, $5 million range. Sometimes it's much higher, sometimes it drops lower, but it's a good money maker because, let's be honest, it's a strong IP. And so when people act surprised, it just means they either didn't pay any attention to the prior version or just don't care. And you can't do that. History will always tell you the future to a certain degree. And so, yeah, I think we have to really know that, given their hands are bound to a certain degree, Bilibili, on the original content, doesn't mean they can't bring it in sooner, doesn't mean they can't make adjustments to things like cubes to a certain degree, but some things they're just bound to due to these contracts. And yeah, I think they're doing their best, and I like to see that. But I think this game deserves its chance, and if Bilibili can really get these aspects implemented sooner than later, be it Tower, be it AI Auto, be it the pity ticket transfer system, etc., I think that will go a long way. One of the other things that was very interesting that they discussed was the fact of a guild/leaderboard system, that it was made clear once I spoke to Zanin that it is not actually part of the game, okay? But the resources from the game will be pulled, and there will be in the official Discord areas for these guilds and leaderboards. So they are trying to implement exclusive content, yet because it's not in the original version of the game, it's going to be made in a way that we'll still be able to have it, but it will be through the official Discord and linking your account to that official Discord. So it's clearly going to be important to be able to link your account to the official Discord if you want to partake in those aspects that they are going to be implementing. So I think that's a great workaround for Bilibili, where they can't create brand new code that is completely not based on something that was originally made in the Japanese version. So how do you get around that? Well, you pull the information from the user's game and you create those areas in the Discord. I like that a lot. I think that shows very much a lot of creativity. And in the end, I like that they're thinking outside the box on those things. Some of the other stuff that was discussed was, of course, is PvP going to be coming? And again, that goes back to what I spoke about before. If it's not in the Japanese version originally, then yeah, unless they do it in Japan, it's not going to be happening on global. Of course, people are always concerned about cubes and ratios and paid onlys, and Xanon made it very clear that the paid only banner on the milestone the reaction was not favorable, so the likelihood of seeing that again is probably incredibly low. So again, I think it all reiterates to the fact that they are listening to the community, but you do have to remember that there are limitations, okay? Limitations that what they can do based on the agreements between Bilibili and the Japanese developers, and of course the Japanese developers who have that IP. And again, we don't know for sure if the IP owner, when they assigned rights to the Japanese developer, if the Japanese developer is allowed to assign those rights, and so Bilibili has the same contract in tow, or if Bilibili has to deal directly with the developer and the developer's hands are tied based on that licensing agreement. So it gets very complex, and I think a lot of people forget that a lot of times when you have multiple ownership interests in a game, and where and who has the final say and veto power. But it is clear Bilibili has a lot of leeway with certain things, and so that is the good news. And the fact that they have their own team working on the conversion process makes at least the global version able to get a lot of aspects of the game implemented sooner than later. So I think that's the most important takeaway. But in the end, I really hope they continue to do these community sit downs. I think they always are a good thing. I think truth and laying it out there is always the best course of action. It may not be what you want to hear, but at least you have the proper information in front of you for purposes of evaluating how and if you want to keep moving forward on playing that particular game. So hats off to them for doing this so soon, almost a month into the game. So I think it was a brilliant move, and I hope we see it again and again. And yeah, I'm excited for the future, honestly, of this game. I like the Japanese version. I still play it, as you guys know. I'm not going anywhere from either version. And all I can hope for is the global version at least trying to push the envelope to make it better than the Japanese version as a whole. And if they can do that, then I think it's a win-win for the community. It may not be perfect, but again, that is the reality of the situation. And with an IP this strong, You get some hard heads that aren't necessarily true players, like Xanon and a lot of those moderators. True players understand the pain sometimes. Developers, IP holders, they're not players 90% of the time, so they don't understand the importance of certain things. So you really need people in your corner pushing and cheering. And again, complaining to complain will not get anything done. Constructive complaining, that's what needs to be done at times. So make sure your thoughts are always articulate when you make suggestions. Make sure they're well thought out and reasoned, and the reasons why for them. If you do that and the community consistently does that, you will see more action than not. Just making derogatory comments and things without a true evidentiary basis behind them will get you nowhere. So everybody be smart, be wise, and present your thoughts, opinions, and suggestions with that type of process going forward. Concise, with evidence, with respect for who you're speaking to, and those will be the way to change the future of any game in any forum. So with that, again, please like and subscribe. It helps a lot. Have a great day.